The story of the movie begins with a guy named Jiwoo. He is from South Korea and comes from a middle-income family. Because of his intelligence and diligence, he was accepted into scholarships in distinguished schools. This school is for geniuses only. Everyone in this school is rich except for Jiwoo. Because most of the students are rich, they have the possibility to take private lessons. We notice that Jiwoo's grades have become unsatisfactory compared to his classmates and also compared to his grades in the past. Then the first semester exam begins. And when the exams are over, Jiwoo's grades are also unsatisfactory. We see teacher Kim advising Jiwoo to transfer to a regular school, but Jiwoo was adamant about staying at this school. Meanwhile, we see Jiwoo in the dormitory and his friends ask him to bring them food and drinks. Indeed, he does this to them, but unfortunately the building guard, who is called Lee, discovers the matter and informs the administration of this because drinks are prohibited in the dormitory. The next day, Teacher Kim is chastising Jiwoo. He is asking him about the people who wanted to drink with him because there are many bottles of drinks, and this indicates that there is more than one person involved in this matter. But his attitude was brave because he did not tell the professor any name. He decides to bear the punishment alone. As a result, he was expelled from the dormitory for a week. We see his friends who are starting to feel guilty, so they gave him money in appreciation of what he did for them. But he refused to take the money and he tells them that they are his friends and this is what should be done. Someone suggests that he live in the abandoned science lab. But there was a small problem that guard Lee searched the place daily, so they were afraid that the guard would find out. Now we get to know the guard Lee and discover that he is a person from North Korea. He was seeing a doctor who advised him to quit his job because this work affected his health and caused him insomnia. But he tells the doctor that he cannot leave his job because this job is the only one currently available to him. Lee was taking sleeping pills. The main cause of his insomnia was his job as a night watchman. We watch Jiwoo watching the math problems the teacher gave them for them to solve. He was not able to solve these questions, especially after the professor told them that it was useless to search the internet for answers, because there is no solution to these mathematical problems on the internet. He takes his bag to leave the dormitory. He is accompanied by a friend named Boram. He caught her eye when he refused to confess to his roommates. She tells him that he should tell the teacher the names of the friends who wanted the drink so that he won't be punished alone. But he is not interested in what she said and goes home. But when he arrived, he did not find his mother. He saw the house in disarray. He decided to clean and tidy up the house. When his mother arrived, she was so happy to find him. She asks him about his studies, but he doesn't tell her about his poor grades. He tells her that everything is fine at school. She apologizes to him because she tells him that she did not provide him with the good life after his father passed away. She apologizes to him for not giving him the comfortable life like the rest of his friends. He was affected by what she said, and he was watching the hope in his mother's eyes, who was waiting for the achievement that her son would achieve. He decides not to tell her what happened to him in the dormitory. He lies and tells her that he came to get some clothes and go back to the dormitory. Already he takes his bag and leaves. At night he was confused because he did not know where to go. Rain and wind started touching his tears. He decides to go to an abandoned science lab. Suddenly, we see the guard, Lee, as he follows strange footprints, and these traces lead him to the science laboratory. He watches Jiwoo inside the lab. Jiwoo starts talking to him and tells him that because of him he was kicked out of the dormitory for a week, and he tells him that his family is on a trip and he doesn't have the house key. He told him he couldn't go anywhere. Lee was sympathetic to him, so he decided to let him stay in the lab without telling anyone. Then Lee takes him to the office. Lee starts by solving riddles and math problems. Jiwoo was trying to do the homework the teacher gave them, but after a tiring day he falls asleep and the question paper falls out of his hands. Lee pays attention to the paper and takes it while noticing the questions that were written on the paper. Out of boredom, Lee decided to solve the math problems and put them in Jiwoo's bag. The next day, Jiwoo is surprised that a sheet of paper in his bag contains a solution to mathematical problems. He hands the paper to the teacher, who was surprised that Jiwoo did the assignment correctly for the first time. Also, surprisingly, Jiwoo was the only person whose answer was correct. After the lecture ended, he remembered that the person he was with was only the guard Lee. So he knew that the guard was the one who solved the mathematical problems. He went to him quickly to thank him, but Lee was insensitive. Jiwoo walked out of the office without a word. He began to think of a way to express his gratitude to the guard. At night, he decided to clean up, but when Lee saw him, he stopped him. As the days go by, we see Jiwoo come up to Lee and ask him to help him solve math problems. But Lee was refusing to do so. While working, Lee overhears the teachers discussing the level of the students, including Jiwoo. They were discussing the students' poor performance. They were saying that they would transfer the students who are not good to regular schools if they continued with their not good level. At night, Lee asks Jiwoo about the scholarship and how he got it. He tells him that he got it because he was the smartest student in his old school, and also because of his father's death he was able to get the scholarship. He tells him that he entered this school so that he could enter a prestigious university and then get a good job to help his mother. Lee asks him to meet him at the abandoned science lab. The next day, Lee calls a friend who helped him escape from North Korea. He asked him to bring him lamps. He already brought the lights. Then Lee went to the science lab and took the lamps with him. Suddenly, he saw that Jiwoo was waiting for him with strawberry milk, which Lee likes. Lee told him he would train him, but he had 3 conditions. The first condition is that no one knows about it, and the second condition is that Jiwoo not ask him about anything that is not related to mathematics. The third condition is that he does not want to know how many degrees he got. He rejoices and agrees to the terms. Lee gives him a rule of thumb and tells him that understanding the question is more important than solving it. After that time passes and they complete the training. After it gets late, Lee goes to sleep, but by chance, Jiwoo watches an audio recorder and he knows that there are audio recordings of a singer, so he asked Lee about that. He answers and tells him that he loves classical music. Because Jiwoo wanted to make Lee happy, he turned on the music on his phone because the sound was clear. He also asks him why he left North Korea, but Lee mentions Jiwoo on terms, so Jiwoo shuts up and doesn't ask again. Meanwhile, Teacher Kim tells the students an important news. There will be a competition and the person who wins it will qualify for prestigious universities. The competition will be in 2 months. We see Jiwoo going out to buy strawberry milk every day. He buys it as a thank you to Lee. But suddenly Boram watches him and tells him why he takes this milk every day. She wonders if it is possible that Jiwoo is addicted to this milk. He tells her it's true and leaves and goes to Lee. He used to go to Lee's on a daily basis to improve his math skills. One day, Lee gave a mathematical problem that no one could solve without using a mathematical calculator. Lee asked him to do this homework without help. He still solves the mathematical problem. He continued for 3 hours, but he was able to complete the solution. He was able to solve it correctly. The next day, tired, Jiwoo fell asleep in class without realizing it. Boram wakes him up to pay attention to the lesson. After that, we see one of his friends who was also at a poor academic level, and he has moved out of school. It was clear on him the features of sadness because he left his friends. Jiwoo was afraid of being transferred too since he didn't get good grades. Boram comes to him and tells him not to be afraid, and she tells him that she is also in this school after getting a scholarship. She told him this to relieve his stress, but he thought that she was mocking him because this scholarship is only given to students of the poor class. He thought Boram was from the upper class, and that's why he didn't believe her. She was about to tell him the truth, but in the meantime her mother comes to her. And her mother was angry with her because her daughter befriends people from the poor class. We find out that Boram actually got the scholarship because her father is separated from her mother. One of her rights was to get the scholarship. Because she was well off, she used to take private lessons and get good grades. We see Boram's mom telling her daughter that she's got the best teacher in town. Indeed, she goes with her mother to meet the teacher. At night we watched Lee, who was noticing that Jiwoo was nervous and scared. This is what made him unfocused in the lesson. He tells him not to let surrender get the better of him, because if he does not make surrender overcome him, he will have two possibilities. The first is success and the second is failure. But if he makes fear overcome him, there will be one possibility, which is failure. And he tells him that he must complete the attempt because it is possible that he will be successful. He also tells him that he will be there to help him until he gets into the university he wants. Suddenly Boram enters the lab. They were both surprised. She thanks Lee for helping them. Lee was looking at her with strange looks. Jiwoo tells him that he didn't tell anyone about it, but she tells him that she watched him and revealed the matter. She tells him that Jiwoo didn't tell her anything. She asked to come with them to study. Lee agreed to it on the condition that no one knew about it. Then Lee watches a group of students bring food into the dormitory. But he didn't do anything about it because he didn't want someone to get hurt because of him like he did with Jiwoo earlier. Jiwoo starts to ask him about his beginnings in mathematics. He told him that at first he was studying in order to excel and his family would be proud of him. But when he studied mathematics deeper, he began to love it. Boram had a musical performance at the competition. Because Lee had experience with this, he taught her how to play. He tells her that she should play like math and numbers. She is already learning that. The next day, Jiwoo was in class and he noticed that the teacher was making mistakes in solving the math problem. The teacher tries to make amends for the situation and the embarrassment that happened to him. So he tells Jiwoo that even if the solution is wrong, they should proceed according to what is in the book of the Ministry of Education. But Jiwoo says that this school has outstanding students and they shouldn't accept mistakes. The teacher tries to defend himself, but to no avail. So he decided to punish Jiwoo and kick him out of the class. Meanwhile, Lee's friend brings him a phone to call him and also to hear the music clearly. Meanwhile, Jiwoo watches Lee as he watches mathematical theorems and theories on the phone. So he decided to make Lee happy and he went to a friend to print mathematical theorems and theses for him. He actually printed it out and gave it to Lee, who asked them to focus on their studies for the competition that will be tomorrow. Jiwoo started with the solution as Lee taught him, but Boram was feeling nervous and left the exam. He remained worried about her, and when the exam was over, he tried to call her, but her phone was switched off. So he sent text messages to her, but to no avail. Then he learned that her mother had punished her for not doing well in the exam. Afterwards, Lee and Jiwoo have a good time celebrating because Jiwoo passed the exam. The next day, the headmistress of the school informs the teachers that a necessary meeting will be held. During the meeting, we discover that the exam questions have been leaked and they must find out who caused it. We watch Lee and Jiwoo go shopping. One of Lee's old students comes to greet him and tells him that he is the smartest math professor. But Lee was embarrassed because he didn't want Jiwoo to know who he was. When he returns to the office, he remembers when he was with his son and they were drinking strawberry milk. The next day, Jiwoo notices the news and they were talking about a mathematical equation, which is one of the most difficult mathematical operations, and that the one who discovered it is Professor Lee from North Korea. When Jiwoo finds out, he goes over to him and tells him that he knew everything. Lee was furious and was about to hit Jiwoo as he warned him not to bring up this topic again. The next day, Jiwoo was being interrogated because the security cameras showed him leaving the computer room the day before the exam. They told him they were accusing him of leaking questions, but he justifies his position, telling them that he was only printing papers. Teacher Kim tells him that he believes what he said, but none of the other teachers will believe him. That is why he is asking him to transfer from school so that he will not be punished. He is forced to agree and sign a contract of transfer to another school. On the news, we see that they say that South Korea has kidnapped Professor Lee from North Korea. Lee's friend was trying to convince him to go out to the media and tell them the truth and clear the accusations against South Korea. But he was angry and told him he would not forget what they did to his son. We find out that Jiwoo has been overhearing all the talking. He was surprised when he saw Lee packing his suitcase as he was going to the train station. But he remembered when his son accused him of being selfish because he had brought him to South Korea, and he could not live in any other country than his. We discover that Lee was one of the most important teachers, so he was exploited in the manufacture of nuclear weapons. But he refused this thing, but they forced him to help them. When he went to South Korea by sea, he lost his son after the coastal forces shot him. And this was a tough situation that Lee will never forget. Jiwoo gets his mother's permission to transfer to another school. Lee was sitting in a motel when Boram called him and told him about Jiwoo transferring to a new school. On the day the results were announced, Jiwoo was about to leave the school, but Boram had taken his bag to make him stay till the concert. At the beginning of the concert, Professor Young talks about Professor Lee and his mathematical skills. Suddenly, Lee entered, and all the students were surprised because this person was the guard. Everyone was in a state of shock from what they saw. When Lee got on stage, he started talking about Jiwoo, and he told them that he was the one printing out the mathematical theories for him and he didn't leak the questions. He also talks about his story in North Korea and clears South Korea of the accusations it has been exposed to. Lee informs them that the person who leaked the questions is Teacher Kim. He tells them that he saw him do it because Teacher Kim was angry at Jiwoo when he told him that it was the wrong solution. So, he decides to accuse Jiwoo in order to transfer him to another school. Afterwards, he thanks Jiwoo for making him feel the fatherhood that he lost. When Jiwoo heard this, he started to cry. After that, when he met his friend, he gave him a passport, and he told him that he was now a free citizen and that he had all rights to travel to all countries. He was very happy and then bid farewell to Jiwoo. He gives him a copy of the original mathematical theorem along with the genius's pen that Lee got when he was young. After many years, Lee is now teaching at the most prestigious universities in the world. Jiwoo travels to Lee, who is at the Math Research Center, and gives him strawberry milk. Lee was surprised to see Jiwoo coming back after all these years. He gets excited when he sees him and hugs him because Jiwoo was like his own son. I hope you enjoyed the video. Subscribe for more, hit the like button to support us, and leave a comment if you'd like us to review your favorite movie. Until the next time, take care.